Hello, everyone. It's me, Jordyn Smith, the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. I want to talk about an asteroid that's really near and dear to my heart that I have done an immense amount of research and continue to do research on. And it's an asteroid that's not talked about that much, or I don't think I've ever heard an astrologer talk about it. Before I get into this, because this asteroid is very activated right now with the current transits that are going on, but there's a couple of things I want to mention. I'm having you Scorpios fill up my books for the birthday special. So continue to do so if you want to, excuse me, if you want to come see me for your birthday special. I feel like all of you guys know it's $75 for 90 minutes meeting with me, and I love talking about you guys' soul's evolutionary intent and going over your year ahead. So there's that. And also, I wanted to make a note. In my last video, I talked about the Saturn Trinity and how Saturn's North Node dipped into Leo. So I was talking to my friend Sue, who's a phenomenal astrologer, and she watched the video and she was like, oh, it piqued my interest. And she has a lot of research skills. She actually said, I went back and I looked, and she was like, the North Node of Saturn goes back and into Leo every few years, and it doesn't stay there for long. It stays there for only a couple of weeks, mind you. So I wanted to clarify that. So it is really rare for Saturn's North Node to be in Leo. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before. But with research skills, we found out that it happens every few years. It stays there just a couple of weeks. And also, the last day for the North Node of Saturn to be in Leo is the day before the US election. So that is very profound. I probably will do a deeper dive into that to segue off of that talk that I did earlier this week. But I wanted to note that because, yeah, it is not a occurrence that happens often. And so I wanted to clarify on that for everyone. So what I want to talk to you all today about is the asteroid Sophrosyne. And Sophrosyne and the myth of Pandora's box. When Pandora opened her box and left, it opened up, and all of these spirits of despair and fear and gluttony and all of the negative traits came flying out. In the box, she was left with hope and a couple of other beautiful personified spirits. It's something that we call a deva, which is a personified spirit out in nature. It's what people actually consider like fairies or things like that, but in myths. But for this, I want you all to know that in her box, yes, hope was left, but also the personified spirit or the deva Sophrosyne. And Sophrosyne is used as an adjective even now in like Greek culture to mean temperance. Now, this word has been bastardized through distortions of natural law, and oftentimes it's used as a way to speak about women who need to have prudence, who need to maintain purity in a sexual sense, in a religious sense. But the essence of the word Sophrosyne is about having temperance, soundness of mind. What I have found to take this further is when you're looking at it in someone's natal chart, it really is highlighting Venus and Neptune. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, and we all know I've talked about Venus being about our relationship to self, our relationships with others. It's about the worldly senses, It's about your values, what you give meaning to, what you need to survive. And Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, meaning that truly, in the most spiritual and timeless sense, Neptune is indicative of Source and our relationship to Source being the way through. It's also where we give ultimate meaning to other types of relationships or people, places, things, and we experience disillusionment through our own ideals around that. And it's to serve the evolutionary lesson of dissolving anything that's impeding upon your own spiritual relationship with self and with Source. So a lot of people who have strong Neptunian, Piscean influences, they can have a divine relationship that, I mean, all of us, it's our natural given gift to have this relationship with Source. But through the distortions of natural law, it's impeded upon us really accessing the merging of our third eye with Source to have that direct experience. And so we will typically have ideals around different people or giving ultimate meaning to different things other than Source and our relationship with Source. And then that's whenever we experience those disillusioning experiences. It can also be where, and I've definitely experienced this in my own life, where for my own karmic reasons, my own karmic past, have been really afraid to have and develop a spiritual relationship at different points in my life, out of fear. And so I've been someone who has utilized different things as a way to escape reality instead of trying to merge with Source, right? When I'm trying to escape the reality of a situation or a relationship, I've gone to substances. And also, whenever I have been afraid to have a spiritual relationship, which is actually a really common thing that's not talked about. It's like something that in true Piscean nature, a lot of us don't understand that that's what's going on. And so I've given ultimate meaning to partnerships or for me, my Neptune's in Capricorn and my North Node is in Pisces in the 10th house. So I've given ultimate meaning to authority figures before in my life, whether they've been teachers or people in parental roles or different aspects like that. And then I've experienced crisis and disillusionment. And what that ultimately did is it had me circle back around through that crisis to only want to focus on my relationship with spirit. I'm someone who will typically do a dance back and forth, though, and I've been learning to not do that. Again, I love being open and honest with you guys because some of you might have experienced similar things. But I wanted to explain that a little bit because Sophrosyne is where we can find that balance between our inner relationship to self, our relationships with others, and our divine relationship with Source. It helps us to connect, and wherever you find it in your chart will teach you about where you might have a struggle of having that balance. Okay? Can teach you a lot about what it is that you're needing to find the strength in to have that temperance. So I wanted to explain this a little bit. I actually think I'm going to do like a class series or something on this asteroid later on. I'm wanting to put it together. But I want to show you this chart so that way you guys can, with the information I just gave you, and you all following the astrology and understanding what's going on, let me share this chart and point this out. So there's not a glyph on here, but you can see this is Sophrosyne. It's at 5 degrees Capricorn, which means it is squaring the nodal axis. Sophrosyne right now is also ruled by this Saturn in Pisces retrograde. So whenever we're using Sophrosyne, we also want to pull in Venus and we want to pull in Neptune. which is really interesting because Sophrosyne is squaring the nodes. The south node would be the point of determination. It's the last node that was conjunct this asteroid, and it's ruled by that Venus. And Sophrosyne is ruled by Saturn, which is ruled by this Neptune. So it's already pulling in this natural dynamic that it correlates to, which is Venus and Neptune, the higher octave of Venus. So what is this speaking to? It's temperance, right? All things temperance. So let me stop this and talk. So the south node in Libra with Sophrosyne square to it, and that being that point of determination, the thing that we need to focus on. It's almost this double signature of trying to have temperance, soundness of mind through a recalibration, a rebalancing through Sophrosyne and Capricorn through a restructuring. It's just asteroids tend to light up charts, the astrology or someone's natal chart with a repeating signature. And this is no different with these transits that are going on. So if there's needing to have temperance, meaning temperance is about discernment, how we stay within our own equilibrium, soul, spirit, ego, merging, aligning together to have that equilibrium, that harmony within. This is really about self-reflecting through what has been occurring lately for us to apply what is feeling Venus in Sag, natural and authentic to each one of us, the same thing I was talking about in my last video, as a way for this restructuring of the past and present to occur within the future. So there's this need to really focus on if we're wanting to do Venus and Sag and to align ourselves with more natural values and needs and things that feel very authentic to our soul nature, we're needing to have discernment around what that is through our intuition. It's facilitating and speaking to this dynamic of, in order for this restructuring within society, within humanity, within our own personal lives as well to occur through the dissolving of the past and the metamorphosis of a restructuring, one structure now becoming a new structure. The key is through Neptune and Venus is to really tap into our inner intuition about what is natural and timeless about each one of us. What is natural that's coming up? What are your natural needs? What are your natural values? Are you someone who has been living for the expectations of others? Are you feeling the pressure of that? Even on a very basic level right now with Sophrosyne squaring those nodes and looking at that point of determination, the South Node in Libra, it's, are you needing to restructure through eliminating having to live up to others' expectations in order to reharmonize and rebalance with your own authenticity for this restructuring to occur? How can you tap into what feels more natural and authentic that helps in forgiveness of self more than anything? I think so often we get stuck in this back and forth dynamic of a lack of forgiveness. And usually we can be looking at what someone else has done or how it's impacted us or a traumatic event that has created trauma within us. And at the end of the day, the person that we need to forgive the most is ourself. And that's part of this Neptune. And Venus in Sag dynamic, Neptune being in Pisces, there's this need to forgive oneself for not understanding where we might not have been being authentic. And then we need to remember that Cassandra is still trining Uranus and Taurus, and Uranus and Taurus is ruled by that Venus and Sag. It's liberating from the over-identification with values that are stemming from distortions and not in alignment with natural and universal timeless laws. And so a need to be generous in our assumptions about ourselves and to give ourselves Piscean grace for where things might have fallen out of whack or where we didn't have discernment around authority, or just seeing as there's this Capricorn dynamic, or not having discernment around who to share things with, who not, who to trust, who not to. And the ability to have discernment or temperance around utilizing our voices and our expressions in a way that's meaningful to the whole. It's also where, with this dynamic with Sophrosyne, is you might be dealing with something lately where you could be playing an authority role in someone's life. They could be coming to you for guidance. You could be playing more of a counselor role and they're a counselee, or more of a teaching role in their life and they're the student. And so it's about having this discernment around listening to your own inner intuition about how to truly help that person. Is that person helping themselves, or are they stuck in that same structure? Do you need to do more of Neptune and Pisces and have a supreme form of giving where you don't participate in enabling what they're doing anymore? It's great when someone follows our advice, but I always say this expression, and this is so true with this Sag dynamic. There's more than one way to get to Denny's, and it often takes people longer than some other people, depending upon how expanded their consciousness is and where they're at in life. And if you are starting to become frustrated or angry that someone isn't living up to an expectation of yours, you're giving them guidance, and you're getting stuck in this loop of like, well, I told you so, and why are you still doing this? Or why can't you just listen to me? Sometimes we need to pull in that Neptune and Pisces during this time, and that Sophrosyne and Cassandra. Have a constructive conversation with them. Say what it is that you need to say. Don't try to force it, but also just let it go and surrender. I know for me personally, I'm having to practice that in my life, dealing with family, which is so on par for this transit of Sophrosyne and Capricorn. It is truly this dynamic of needing to release my own expectations of outcomes, and having discernment and temperance around that, and following my own inner intuition on how to just let things go that we can't control. So Sophrosyne and Capricorn is about having temperance around not controlling. And with the point of determination, or the resolution node, being the South Node in Libra, it's about not trying to control an outcome and just listening to yourself and releasing it, because you can't control what other people do. You can only control yourself. So if you're someone who has been stuck in patterns that are dealing with your external relationships with anyone, there's this need with this transit to really look at one's self-control and self-determination to not be who you once were. If you were someone who kept trying to bulldoze an opinion or trying to get the best outcome. The truth of the matter is, with Neptune and Pisces, Saturn being ruled by that, Saturn and Pisces retrograde ruling Sophrosyne and Cassandra, is we don't truly know what another person needs. Only the divine does. And we can see an imminent crisis on the horizon sometimes with Cassandra, but we don't want to get wrapped up in other people's dynamics because not your circus, not your monkeys. You could be supportive, you can be empathetic, you can have compassion, Neptune. You need to follow your own drumbeat. You need to follow your own authenticity. And that is Venus and Sag right now. And allowing things to play out in the way that they need to play out and surrendering through that. And Sophrosyne and Cap is really about not control. It's having that temperance and discernment around not controlling and releasing and surrendering to what's happening. But it's also about having self-control and self-determination to not step in sometimes when you really want to, because it could actually be perpetuating a non-growth situation. It could be perpetuating, recreating the old structured reality. And so there's this need with Saturn and Pisces retrograde. This is definitely something that someone or some people are re-experiencing and reliving right now. I know that I am. Like if you could only know. um, and really, as an act of self-love, self-compassion, and self-empathy and forgiveness, it's about having to truly just let go. It's interesting. In evolutionary astrology, Jeff Green has talked about like in Capricorn, because it can be such a control kind of thing. One of the dynamics is someone with a lot of Capricorn, the thing that they crave the most is to lose control. And when I first heard that, I was like, lose control. I have a lot of Capricorn. I was like, lose control. Like, I never want to lose control. That's scary. That's terrifying. To me, as I, in true Sagittarian fashion, was pondering on it, eventually something was seeded into my intuition, which was it's not about losing control in the sense of letting everything go to hell in a handbasket. It's more of relinquishing control in order for things to naturally play out and not stepping in and trying to be God. Because anytime we're trying to control an outcome, we're playing a pseudo de facto God role or goddess role. And that's not always helpful. It's just like with children. Sometimes children have to learn natural consequences. It's the best way, in my opinion. Um, you try to intervene, they're not hearing, they're not listening. This is such a cardinal dynamic. Um, they're not listening, they're not hearing you, and eventually you have to sit on your hands and give that supreme form of giving and allow them to figure it out for themselves. You see this phenomenon in like so many different areas of life. Like I worked in mental health at a rehab facility for teenage girls, and the whole thing was oftentimes like what you hear in AA through sitting in those meetings with them is like things only get better once you hit rock bottom, which to me is like, oh my gosh, it just confronts you with how much as humans we feel like we need to suffer. We need to get to the lowest point to learn that lesson. But that is when someone loses control. They're not trying to control in that situation the way that they drink or the way that they use uh substances. It's like eventually they do lose control, and through that loss of control, and actually begets a lot of wisdom. So we're not wanting to end up with a crisis on our hands here on personal levels. What we're wanting to do is we're wanting to just follow the natural rhythm and flow of how life is trying to unfold in the present moment and staying present with that. So it's relinquishing control instead of trying to control. Trying to control usually comes with Aries anger. So whenever we surrender to trying to control the outcome, Sophrosyne is definitely speaking to having temperance and discernment around our expectations and where we might be trying to control a certain outcome right now. And that's really not staying in the present moment. Sometimes we're just needing to allow ourselves to go with the current of life. And as it naturally unfolds through that direct experience, we gain so much more wisdom. We also gain Piscean faith and grace through the wisdom of the direct experience that can be utilized later on to navigate different currents. So I just wanted to speak to this. This is a short conversation, but I did want to put it out there. If you want to know more about this asteroid in your own chart, it's really profound. It can really have the ability to help, especially if you're dealing with relational dynamics. It tells a story. It tells a story about the past. It tells a story about the present moment or the things that are unfolding. So if you have a lot of dynamics coming up with work, family, or relationships in general, and you want to understand this in your own natal chart, come see me. I would love to dive into this with you. I would love to help you navigate, and I would love to validate your experience. So I will see you all later this week. Have a great week. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about one of my absolute favorite asteroids, Sophrosyne.